Welcome back to No Disintegrations. Dave and I break down our thoughts on what's going on from the prequels, the original trilogy, and the Disney Lucasfilm sequels, as well as Star Wars television series. If you want a different take on the science fiction genre, particularly Star Wars, we would be honored if you would join us. And remember, he's no good to me dead.
Welcome back to No Disintegrations. Episode 7 is in the books. And, again, I have mixed feelings about this because I have mixed feelings about the whole show. But, I will say this. I think, from my perspective, and, I talked about this earlier, like, these dudes kill me, man. Every time they start with something good, it's like, okay, I like this. This is good. I can support this. And then they just tube it with some silliness. And again, like, I have nothing against the actress. I think, the gal that plays Sabine is doing a pretty good job. She's a lot better than she was in the first half of the show.
Uh-huh.
I will say her character has had somewhat of an arc-ish, but like, I'm just not buying Sabine as a Jedi. And we talked about that earlier today. It's just
the Jedi part is a tough swallow. I get her in the note I took down with her, everybody bringing up her using a lightsaber, and that doesn't make her a Jedi. Just she's a warrior, flat out. And when I think of she's not like the only Mandalorian to ever hold a lightsaber.
No,
last time I checked, there were tremendous warriors like Pre Vizsla from Death Watch, and
Paz Vizsla, Pre Vizsla, Bo-Katan,
all
Sabine,
of them.
like there's 4. Din Djarin, like you didn't wield it well. But you had at least 5 other Mandalorians that were able to tote around lightsabers.
And she does it, and she does it well.
Yeah.
She's a cunning warrior. I like that about Sabine.
But it's
she also has other disabilities, man.
Yeah. But it doesn't make her a Jedi just because somebody can wield a lightsaber. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of, pushing on the edge of frustration is the fact that, like, this is literally like Kathleen Kennedy's wet dream, and I say that because it's like, oh, the Force is female. Like, we've seen that picture with her and all the, the staff writers that hopefully are going to get fired by,
exclusively women. Right.
Yeah. But the problem with it is like, honestly, it's like, look, there are no men in this show of substance with the exception of Baylan Skoll. Like Baylan, like, look, that guy looks like he can handle some stuff, and Thrawn, I mean, I get it. You want to use the guy that's a great voice actor and have him come into the place, but they're dudes that are a lot more physically intimidating, or guys that could probably pull that character off a little bit better, like a Benedict Cumberbatch, or, some of the other, like, square-jawed, prolific actors of our generation that you could drop in there. So, I mean, like, I get it. Nothing against Mikkelsen. Like, I think he's a great actor, but from a physical standpoint, like, if I'm out in the middle of the galaxy for 9 years fighting for my life, I'm going to be a little bit more, jacked than the guy that they have playing him right now. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like, if you're fighting for your life, you're going to be thin, you're going to look like all your stormtroopers that, underneath, and I know who Captain Enoch is. I've watched The Expanse. I know who the character is. And so that he's pretty jacked. You know what I mean? So, like, you want guys that look like they can survive stuff. And, like, that's part of the drawback, I think, of this show is because they plant ideas and then they move away from them so quickly that it's just frustrating.
Well, in size of casting, I think this is probably one of the best casted shows they've had. Easily. And I say that because you're close up there with Andor. One, Ezra. I think Eamon Esfandi is absolutely on the razor's edge. As far as casting for Ezra.
Yeah.
Sabine, whether we like it or not, if you take, the comic book page and you take her off of it and you put it in the screen, you have Sabine.
Yeah, aesthetically, she looks
aesthetically, like she's all that, dude.
They're just making, like I said, they're just making bad character choices. I mean, that's ultimately what it boils down to. Is like nobody minds, nobody minds some of the training montages, like the lightsaber duels have gotten a little bit better. I will say that, after episode 5, they kind of stepped it up a little bit. But I think, there's just, to me, again, it's just too much of the underpinnings, man. Like one, something as simple as, why doesn't Mon Mothma have the right haircut? Right? Her haircut was short. She had the short bob in Return of the Jedi. I understand that's a few years later, but would she go back to looking the way that she did in Andor? Or is that a choice that the actors made? Or is that just something that we're supposed to overlook as a continuity thing?
That's something I looked over superficially. In fact, that was my first comment about this show, was the political sphere. And then Leia stepping in to help O'Hara. And then, of course, you see the senator there and what have you. That whole kabuki theater that they had set up. And it's just that. They went, and the political commentary of this is man, nothing can strangle any liberty greater than any government body or bureaucratic body. And that body was a good example of that. Yeah. Here they are, they just survived, terrorism on an unprecedented level with a Death Star. And then they're worried about the remnants of that threat coming into their galaxy, and they're still bickering about policy and whose egos need to be served more than the others. And it's just only now it's aimless because the New Republic is in build too. So that's from the political side. That sets that whole stage. Thrawn, in the end of this show, you gotta ask yourself, how does this end? He made a great point to Sabine. He said, no matter what it is you decide to do, understand this. A few days, this ship is going to leave. And you're going to be stranded here on this freaking wasteland. Well, and then Sabine got it, and she knew the risk. But who didn't get it, and I think is still questioning it, is Balin's.
Shin Hati.
You bet.
She's out the lunch.
She's got doubts in her, man.
Yeah,
that's what's going on there.
Well, she's been abandoned. Basically, Balin looked at her and was like, "Hey, look, your mission is way more important. Yeah, your mission is way more important than what I'm doing. So have at it." And it's kind of similar to, the disenfranchisement that Ahsoka had in dealing with Anakin when she left the Jedi Order. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, I think she's starting to get that feeling that, like, hey, look, this guy doesn't have my best interest in mind anymore. Maybe he did at some point, but now whatever his motivations have clearly changed. Straight up, like Balin Skull has a completely different MO that may not be revealed until the end of this season or maybe next season. Who knows? But, like I said, there were some cool parts, like having Ezra, basically is like, hey man, I don't need a lightsaber because I've been training with the Force for 9 years, which is kind of cool, and I think it's interesting that Balin didn't intercede in that one. But when you look at it from a perspective of his thought process is, you essentially have 3 quote unquote wild Jedi fighting. You know what I mean? Because, Ahsoka was out in the wild. She never finished her training officially at the Jedi.
As far as he knew.
Yeah. She never finished her training at the Jedi Academy. She didn't. Like, she had more of a closing of her trials in the world between worlds with Anakin in episode 5 than she ever did in any media that we've seen as far as Star Wars is concerned. The other part of it is then you got Ezra, clearly Jedi in the wild, and Sabine, Jedi in the wild, because they didn't have the order to maintain order with them. So it'll be interesting to see, how that plays out or if it goes anywhere, because I think that whole beat is, interesting. Like, that's the most interesting beat that I think that happened this episode is like, okay, her getting confronted by Ahsoka, and it's like, hey, just put your weapon down. We're cool. We can talk about this.
Yeah, she didn't quite put it that way, and I think it scared her off.
Yeah.
She told her to surrender. It's a big animal, man. It's a whole other giddy up. And it scared her off. But where's she going to go? Where's any of them going to go? They're all stuck there until that damn ship leaves.
Yeah, but they can still get off the planet. I mean, again, and that's another point that we talked about. As long as that minefield is gone, they still had the opportunity to, they still had the opportunity to jump in with with the Purgles and make their way back.
On that note, I got to tell you, when it comes to action and next level, with Mando, it was, Mandalorians on jetpacks, saber in the air, charging. Man, I got to tell you, this, that minefield, when the whales ran into that minefield, and a battle ensued shortly after that when they discovered she was here, and Thrawn sent fighters up there. I got to tell you, that was probably one of the more visually spectacular things I've seen out of Star Wars in a minute.
Yeah.
And I put it up there with that Mandalorian charge when you think about first times for everything. This wasn't a first time for everything, but holy crap, man. Did they really put it together? And it had me captivated. Had me and Mia just totally captivated.
Yeah, and I think, and I get that, and that part I understand. Like I said, there are some great beats in this episode. It's just like there's certain things that I just I can't get behind. So for example, like I understand why Huang's so hard on Sabine because she's not a Jedi, right? Like he will tell her like you're the worst Padawan I've ever seen. Like why? Because everybody knows that she's the worst Padawan he's ever seen because she can't use a Force. Shin Hati looked her in the eyes like you have no power.
See, that's why the whole Jedi thing doesn't seem to wash. And to your point, after that scene, she reaches out for Sabine through the Force, and they connect. And I didn't jive with that right away either. I mean, I could see that she had done that with Ezra.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like that would have made a hell of a lot more sense. And even still, guess what? You never had. Like in all the years of Star Wars, 30 years of history, you've only had really one other time where somebody has reached out through the Force and communicated like that. And that was in Empire Strikes Back when Luke's hanging upside down in Cloud City and he reaches out to Leia. Being revealed.
You
know what I mean? Being revealed later that Leia was Force sensitive because
he couldn't even reach out to Vader.
Correct.
If I remember right.
Right.
He couldn't get him to come back. He just fell upon him in Andor.
So those are some of the things that like, okay, I get it. I'm not not a big fan of that beat. It's like whatever, man. Like it makes more sense. Force sensitive person talking to Force sensitive person. We know that Sabine isn't, and it's kind of like what they did with Finn. They kind of alluded to it in the sequel trilogy that hey, like maybe Finn is Force sensitive because he can handle a lightsaber. Maybe he's Force sensitive because of his connection to Rey, and maybe Kathleen Kennedy's wet dream is freaking John Boyega coming back and playing a Jedi in the new
after she turned him into a babbling fool for 3 big screen movies. Now all of a sudden he's going to be a stud.
Yeah,
I mean that's already a recipe for disaster. That's not Boyega's fault.
No,
in any way whatsoever. I mean,
but that was the thing. It just goes to show you, like when led in a certain direction, when you try and create something rudderless, then you end up with a rudderless story. And that's kind of And I will say this: the difference between the Book of Boba Fett or the Obi-Wan show and like the first season of Mando for sure, second season so, third season not so much. The problem was when you started off with like, hey, this is the start point, this is the end point, then it makes a whole lot more sense. And right now, Dave Filoni, his start point was Rebels and Clone Wars. So basically vectoring those two shows together to create the Ashoka show, and Ashoka being the spiritual sequel, like basically Clone Wars season 8 or 7.5 and season 5 of Rebels. That's what we're getting. Cast wise, those are people that are in it. The villains are those folks. There's a couple extra people, but one of the things I'm really like not too happy with is the fact that they basically turned Morgan Elsbeth is a side character now. She went from being the big bad in her episode in The Mandalorian when she gets captured to being the big bad in the first half of the series, and now she's just a side character that like looks at Admiral Thrawn and goes like, "Hey, maybe we should do this," and Thrawn shuts her down. It's because like, "Oh, you don't know strategy. Shut up."
It's kind of. I don't see her getting shut down like that, but I mean, She's
but
definitely her role got diminished by Thrawn for sure because she ain't in charge now.
Yeah, she's not in charge. But the other piece of it is like even the witch mothers of Dathomir haven't taken her in. She's kind of like this floater character in the middle that's basically a tool for exposition rather than playing a more vital role.
Well, she said she wanted to be Thrawn's lieutenant.
Yeah, but he already has a lieutenant, and that's Captain Enoch. You know what I mean?
Like that's Enoch too. True.
So
she's kind of just
she's cannon fodder on the bridge, man. Like all you need is like some force user come in and choke her and kill her, and then like we move on. That's basically where she is right now. And
I don't see her getting smoked. I see the witches taking off. If anything, if anything happens in that regard, they'll endure. I'm not so sure about Balin, and if Ahsoka catches up to them or up to him, if his apprentice catches up to him, there's a lot of loose ends for him that I think fare much worse than anything that's going to happen to Morgan.
Well, I think really what the concern is like what is the big bad, because it's not Thrawn, right? Thrawn basically was like, look, we're going to let Ahsoka do this because she needs to waste her time.
And then take the hell off.
And then take off. So what's the bigger threat? Because there's a planet full of marauders. Ezra knows something, right? Ezra knows, he's like, oh, is it complicated? Is it like it was before? Is it good or is it bad? There's something going on in this planet that is yet to be seen. One of the things that they've tried to tie it to, again, it goes back to, there was some concept art that came out, and I saw a video on it earlier this week. I forget whose it was. They were talking about how the Zepho, which were the main characters in Jedi Survivor or Jedi Outcast, which were the planets that he was exploring, and this was like this race of beings that traveled hyperspace before it was a thing, and so they are trying to tie some of the live action stuff or the video games into the live action series and just, build the lore up. And again, Filoni is notorious for that, so that doesn't surprise me that it's happening. But what does surprise me is it's like, okay, well, what's the big bad? There's got to be a reason why Thrawn is like 48 hours, I'm out of here. Like he put himself on a timetable. Like why? You know what I mean?
Because he's been stuck there forever, man. That's what? There's not a lot going on that planet. Besides, his destiny lies someplace else. Yes. And he definitely doesn't want anybody that can potentially screw him up by the time he gets on the other side of that void.
Yeah.
For the same reason, the Emperor couldn't afford to let the Kaminians survive. They could have been somebody else's business partner after them. And overrule, and conquer them. This is the same thing. It's too big of a threat for him. I'll say this too, man. But number one question on the Ahsoka side is why didn't she kill Balin when she had the chance? She had that dude by the neck with a lightsaber, and she let him go.
She didn't need to. You know what I mean? Like the thing about Balin that I find the most interesting is like he is the poster child from a certain point of view. Right? He looks at her and he says like, hey, look, it doesn't have to be this way. And they both have kind of acknowledged that now at this point that, Ahsoka doesn't kill him. He hasn't killed Ahsoka. He's like, I'm surprised to see you alive because he knocked her into the water, but he didn't think that, like, I really don't think he was like, oh, she's dead. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I'm trying to hash it out because there's something looming that we just don't know about that Filoni's going to drop. Maybe it's the Bendu, maybe it's the Loaf Wolves, maybe it's some variation of a giant force entity that we haven't seen in live action. Like that would be cool to see the Bendu in live action.
We'll see. I mean, in the end, who's leaving this galaxy?
Yeah. Well,
not everybody's going to make it out. The ship's leaving.
Yeah, but do you think that I don't think that they're going to be limited to getting off the planet. I think Thrawn's going to leave. Yes, I think the Chimera's gone at the end of this episode. But I think, being stuck there on the planet doesn't necessarily mean that they're stuck there on the planet. Like they made it there before.
Yeah, you mean abandoned?
Yeah, like they're not abandoned. like they still got a ship, you know,
Right.
you've got a ship, you've got all the resources that, you know, the villagers that Ezra has been with for years could probably help them find. You know, there's something on that planet that's going to get them out of there. You know, maybe it's another version of the map. Maybe there's a map that brings them back, you know, that we haven't seen yet. Just don't know. But, you know, I think the magic, the magic is gone. And the last point that I will make, because this is the thing that's been sitting in my craw too since I watched it, is like, all right, folks, you know, you hear all the postmodern, you know, muckety mucks talk about, you know, women in leadership are better, or this, that, and the other thing. Okay, folks, now I'm going to say this, and it's probably going to piss some people off, but I don't care. So all the women that are in charge of the New Republic, Mon Mothma, Leia Organa, the First Order still rises, and F's up the galaxy. So, you know, they didn't make any better decisions than their male counterparts. You know, they completely emasculated the male senator in the trial, in the tribunal. Like, they just made him look stupid. You know what I mean? And that was by design. But guess what? The Imperial remnant gets the laugh in the end because the Empire comes back. Palpatine returns somehow, and the New Republic falls. And then, oh, by the way, guess what? Everybody that's on the New Republic planet and on Hosnian Prime gets freaking smoked because, you know, they turn the planet Ilum, which used to be the home of the lightsabers, and Starkiller Base is planet Ilum. You know, that's the
Hey, man, that was another one somebody threw at me. Said that about Balin.
Yeah.
That he could be an older version of Starkiller. That was something that floated out there. Hold on now, because he was in the Jedi Temple. He knew Anakin Skywalker, right? He said he even saw Darth Vader at one point. So there's some interesting. Yeah. I don't know. It could be all BS, but I mean, I could see it working.
The whole Starkiller story, though, you know, was Legends version of a Secret Apprentice that Vader had that ended up flipping the script and joining the Rebel Alliance. And I just don't see Balin's not at that point. You know what I mean?
No, no.
He's well past that. And as a character, like, that would be a unique kind of, you know, toss
I'm telling you, I've been saying it from the jump, man. Balin's an evil cat, man. I think his indifference towards his apprentice at the end is also pretty indicative of that as well.
It's like, well, you raised this girl from a child. Now she's a young woman, and you're just ready to abandon her. What is on that planet that he needs to get to? Like, that's the real question. What's on the planet that he needs to get to? And I don't think like I said, I don't think we might find out at the end of this series or at the end of this season. But again, like, quite frankly, they got some work to do. If they would just put a pin on Sabine being a Jedi and like her just literally saying, like, look, Ezra, I'm giving you your lightsaber back because I can't wield it like you do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a warrior, yes. Jedi, not so much. Like, if she's been training as long as it's been almost 20 years since the end, like, think about it. If it's the end of Rebels, which was at the beginning of the actual rebellion in Star Wars. The Star Wars rebellion was what, 7 to 10 years after Battle of Yavin. So you go from there all the way to, you know, post Empire Strikes Back, and or post Return of the Jedi, and we're 5 years past that. So it's been almost 20 years. Like, either she has it or she doesn't at this point. At this point, if Sabine was, you know, 16, 17 years old when all this kicked off, she's, you know, say she's 30 years old, roughly. Like, if you haven't found it in 30 years, you ain't never going to find it, because they didn't want to train Luke Skywalker, and he was damn Darth Vader's kid, you know? And they're like, oh, he's too old to begin training.
And he was 18.
Right? So
yeah.
at what point, you know, at what point do we acknowledge that, like, everyone is tied to the Force because it is a life force that's between human beings, or between beings in general in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can tap into it, you know? And I think that's the part for me that is the hardest to swallow, is just like, look, stop trying to make people a Jedi that don't need to be, you know? And like, yeah, I think it's cool that, like, Ezra's like, yeah, I gave you the lightsaber for you to train on. It's cool because I've seen you use a lightsaber before, you know? So he understands, like, there's a reason behind that. Like, hey, look, this is a more elegant weapon than a blaster. Obi-Wan said that in, A New Hope. So it's just, to me, it's just forced. Hey, let's force Sabine to be a Jedi so we can have this Jedi Padawan thing going on. And it doesn't work.
No, I'm with you there.
Well, and you think about the amount of time they invested to try and make it work is another problem too. Like there's a lot of standing around and arms crossing.
I'll give it a little bit of leeway. In the end, something else we also got that we didn't mention in this episode was seeing Anakin, the Clone Wars age.
Yeah.
Anakin. And it's always cool as shit just to see him.
Yeah, that was a good note. And then, one of the things,
good little clip.
And one of the things I will give him credit for, and tip of the cap to him for having Ahsoka smile and actually rejoice when she.
Yeah, she's not as wooden in these last couple.
You know what I mean? When she reconnected with Ezra, there was actually some emotion. Again, I don't know if that was direction or if that was a choice that Rosario Dawson did, but it makes sense. For her to be excited about her friend that she hasn't seen for a decade, live and in the flesh, knowing, all the things that potentially could have happened to him while he was there.
Right.
But yeah, I think, this episode again is better. I will say the last three were better than the first three. But for me, that's not saying too much.
Also got an Asajj Ventress drop.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes. It was cool just to see that she finally got some cred.
Well, she's still alive, so they actually made. Yeah,
I don't think so. She should be dead by now. I think she died before the Return of the Jedi.
I don't know.
If I'm not mistaken, that was involved, or even sooner. Perhaps.
Yeah, I can't remember what the timeline with her and Quinlan Voss were, but those guys are probably.
I'll have to look that one up. But I think she deserved it. There's a lot of talk now of people of them wanting to just do a Clone Wars episode, which would be utterly mind-boggling just for the hell of it.
Yeah, I think the best thing for them to do at this point is to abandon anything that they've done so far in canon and just do a Knights of the Old Republic movie, focus in on the Mandalorian War, because they can do the Mandalorians pretty well based off of season 3 of Mando. Bring in Darth Revan, tell Revan's story, and how Revan ends up in the unknown regions of space, conquering a different galaxy. Because then it's a clean slate. You know what I mean? They don't have anything to reference, and if they do reference anything, they can reference the platforms and material that they already have, which the fans already enjoy. So I think that would be my ultimate suggestion. Like I said, hopefully they'll move away from this in season 2. I know that Bob Iger came out and said that they're wading out of the culture war now because it's costing them too much, and I think it might be a little bit too late. I mean, because when you think about the last few live action movies that Disney has had, they've kind of really
every
flopped.
one of them.
Yeah, they've
bad,
really
bad.
When you
now they fired this girl Ziegler.
Yeah, so you're losing
finally.
You're losing billions on the screen. You're losing billions on your streaming service. And oh, by the way, watch yourself. Make no mistake, Vince McMahon might be owning Disney at the rate that he's going, because they just
probably operated vastly better than anybody there now, man. This isn't an idiot.
Yeah, well, but look at it this way: even since WWE dumped the Attitude Era, they're still able to keep their audience and their ratings because they're producing quality content. And think about it.
Call it what you want.
270 plus days a year, they have some kind of WWE content. And they've already partnered with Peacock, and they understand how to do streaming, and they understand how to do all those other things. So, well, and given their relationship with UFC and UFC's relationship with ESPN, the door is there. I mean, it really is. But at the end of the day, I think hopefully they'll make some changes, and narratively, I'd like to see. I want to see. Filoni and Favreau unleashed. I don't want to see them shackled by the front office. I want them to write a Star Wars movie that they've always wanted to write, because they're huge Star Wars nerds, and like deep cuts. Like, I don't care if they're deep cuts after deep. Like, I want to have to like go into the movie with a pad and pen and take notes and go back and research all the stuff that they bring up, because I want a Star Wars movie that is made for the hardcore Star Wars fans. I don't want it for modern.
I think Filoni's the guy that'll do that too.
Yeah,
for sure. He's going to end up running with it at one point.
Yeah, and like I said, I think his relationship with George can get this thing back on track. It's just the front office. Like, we all have bosses. I understand that, but like at some point, like if you could imagine like you get a director like Robert Rodriguez unleashed with storytellers like Filoni and Favreau's ability to manage, a team, they can have a pretty good show. But that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of No Disintegrations. We're going to drop 6 and 7 together, I think, and then we will do number 8, which is the season finale, and we will see what happens. Like, again, there's a big bad out there. We'll figure out what it is, hopefully. If not, we're going to be hanging by the edge of our seat till at least 2025. I know they said the writer strike is over, but they haven't got the actors back yet, and so we'll see where it goes. But until then, binge watch all the old stuff. I would encourage you, if you have not watched the Clone Wars, go back and watch Clone Wars. There's a lot of
there's so much content and story in there that's just it's not just a kid show. It ain't at all.
Yeah, well, and that was the drawback to Rebels too, and we talked about that last week. Rebels started off as a kids show because it was on Disney XD, and then when they moved it, that's when it was like, oh, okay, like this is actually a real show.
I was telling you last night, season 2, episode 2, one TIE fighter attacks a rebel fleet and just smokes them. And what do you know? That one dude and that one TIE fighter was Darth Vader, who figured out where the rebels took off. And he said, "Oh, I'll chase him down."
Yeah,
incredible scene. If it would have been on the big screen, it would have blown the country away.
Yeah, but
it's in Rebels with a smaller budget.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of great content to take out of both shows. Big time.
Well, and you need to watch. Like, if you don't know who Hondo Ohnaka is, man, Hondo is like the best character that has not been.
See, we're not going to see him, dude. I had high hopes.
I don't think we'll see him this season, but at some point, like, I would love to see Hondo. Like, he would have been a great addition to the Bad Batch. Like, oh, don't work for her, come work for me. Like, that would have been a great drop in.
For sure.
Because Hondo survived. Like, because he's a cockroach, man. That guy's going to live forever.
Oh, for real.
But rather than talking about Hondo,
a degenerate cockroach.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, but for Rob and Dave, this has been No Disintegrations. We'll catch you guys next week. Thanks.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye.